Hello, fellow Americans. This is Mr. Steffler coming to you from room 111, and I'm here to read about one of the most interesting stories in American history, the California Gold Rush. Our names and terms are 49er, Californio, Moreno Vallejo, John Sutter, James Marshall, California Gold Rush. Main idea. Gold was found in California and thousands rushed to the territory. California quickly became a state. The gold rush made California grow rapidly, helping bring about California's cultural diversity. One American story. Louisiana Wilson said in the year 1849, the gold excitement spread like wildfire. The year before, James Marshall had discovered gold in California. Louisiana's husband decided to become a 49er, someone who went to California to find gold starting in 1849. Most 49ers left their families behind, but Louisiana traveled to California with her husband. She later said, I thought there would be where we could go, and where I could go, I could take my two toddling babies. Louisiana discovered that women and their homemaking skills were rare in California. Shortly after she arrived, a miner offered her $5 for her biscuits that she was baking. Shocked, she just stared at him. He quickly doubled his offer and paid in gold. Louisiana realized that she could make money by feeding miners, so she opened a hotel. Like the Wilsons, thousands of people from around the world became 49ers. In this section, you will read about the 49ers and what their mining experiences were like. You will learn how rapid growth of California's population caused problems for people who lived in California before 1849. You will also discover how the gold rush boosted California's economy and changed the nation's history. California before the rush. Before the 49ers came, California was populated by as many as 150,000 Native Americans and 6,000 Californios, settlers of Spanish or Mexican descent. Most Californios lived on huge cattle ranches. They had acquired their estates when the Mexican government took away the land that once belonged to the California missions. One important California was Moreno Vallejo, a member of one of the oldest Spanish families in the Americas. He owned 250,000 acres of land. Proudly describing the accomplishments of Californians, Vallejo wrote, "We were the pioneers of the Pacific coast. While General Washington was carrying on the revolution, Vallejo himself had been the commander of Northern California when it belonged to Mexico. When Mexico owned California, its government feared American immigration and rarely gave land to foreigners. But John Sutter, a Swiss immigrant, was one exception. Dressed in a second-hand French army uniform, Sutter had visited the Mexican governor in 1839. A charming man, Sutter persuaded the government to grant him 50,000 acres in the unsettled Sacramento Valley. Sutter built a fort on his land and dreamed of creating his own personal empire based on agriculture. In 1848, Sutter sent a carpenter named James Marshall to build a sawmill near the American River. One day, Marshall inspected the canal that brought water to Sutter's mill. He later said, "My eye was caught by a glimpse of something shining. I reached my hand down and picked it up. It made my heart thump, for I was certain it was gold." Rush for gold. News of Marshall's thrilling discovery spread rapidly. From all over California, people raced to the American River, starting the California Gold Rush. A gold rush occurs when large numbers of people move to a site where gold has been found. Throughout history, people have valued gold because it is scarce, beautiful, and easy to shape and resistant to tarnish. Miners soon found gold in other streams flowing out of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Colonel R.B. Mason, a military governor of California, estimated that the region held enough gold to pay the cost of the present war with Mexico 100 times over. He sent news to Washington with a box of gold dust as proof. The following year, thousands of gold seekers set out to make their fortunes. 49ers who wished to reach California from the east had a choice of 3 routes. All of them were dangerous. Route 1, sail 18,000 miles around South America and up the Pacific coast, suffering from storms, seasickness, and spoiled food. 2, sail to the narrow Isthmus of Panama and cross overland, risk catching a tropical disease, and then sail to California. Or 3, travel the trails across North America, braving rivers, prairies, mountains, and all the hardships of the trail. Because the adventure was so difficult, most gold seekers were young men. A gray beard was almost as rare as a petticoat, observed one miner. Luzanna Wilson said during the 6 months she lived in a mining city of San Francisco, I only saw 2 other women. Life in mining camps. The mining camps had colorful names like Mad Mule Gulch, Hangtown, or Coyote Diggings. They began as rows of tents along the streams flowing out of the Sierra Nevada. Gradually, the tents gave way to rough wooden buildings that housed stores and saloons. Mining camps could be dangerous. One woman who lived in the region wrote about camp violence. In the short space of 24 days, we had murders, fearful accidents, bloody deaths, a mob whipping, and a hanging, and a fatal duel. The mining life was hard for other reasons. Camp gossip told the miners who grew rich overnight by finding 8-pound nuggets, but the reality was such easy pickings were very rare. Miners spent their days standing in knee-deep icy streams where they sifted through tons of mud and sand to find small amounts of gold. Exhaustion, poor food, and disease all damaged the miners' health. Not only was acquiring gold brutally difficult, but the miners had to pay outrageously high prices for basic supplies. In addition, gamblers, con artists also swarmed into the areas to swindle the miners out of their money. As a result, few miners grew rich. Now and then, Levi's blue jeans. Nearly everyone in the United States owns at least one pair of faded, comfortable blue jeans. These first blue jeans were invented for California miners. In 1873, a man named Levi Strauss wanted to sell a sturdy pant to miners. Strauss made his pants out of the strongest fabric he could buy, cotton denim. He reinforced the pockets with copper rivets so they could hold heavy tools without ripping. For more than 125 years, jeans have remained popular. Levi Strauss's pants have proven to be durable in more ways than one. Miners from around the world. About 2/3 of the 49ers were Americans. Most of these were white men, many from New England. However, Native Americans, free blacks, and enslaved African Americans also worked the mines. Thousands of inexperienced miners came from Sonora, Mexico. Other foreign miners came from Europe, South America, Australia, and China. Most of the Chinese miners were peasant farmers who fled the region that had suffered severe crop failures. By the end of 1851, 1 out of every 10 immigrants was Chinese. Used to the backbreaking labor in their homeland, the Chinese proved to be patient miners. They would take over sites that Americans had abandoned because the easy gold was gone. Through steady hard work, the Chinese made these played-out sites yield profits. American miners resented the success of the Chinese and were suspicious of their different foods, dress, and customs. As the number of Chinese miners grew, American anger toward them also increased. Conflicts amongst miners. A mixture of greed, anger, and prejudice caused some miners to cheat others. For example, I.B. Gillum promised to free an enslaved African-American Tom if he saved enough gold. For more than a year, Tom mined for himself each day after the day's work was done. When he finally had $1,000, Gilman gave him his paper saying he was free. The next day, the paper suspiciously disappeared. Even though Tom was certain he had been robbed, he couldn't prove it. He had to work for another year before Gilliam would free him. Once an easy-to-find gold was gone, the American miners began to force Native Americans and foreigners such as Mexicans and Chinese off the gold fields to reduce the competition. This practice increased after California became a state in 1850. One of the first acts of the California legislature was to pass the Foreign Miners Tax, which imposed a tax of $20 a month on miners from other countries. That was more than the cost that they could afford to pay. As tax collectors arrived in camps, most foreigners left. Driven from the mines, the Chinese opened shops, restaurants, and laundries. So many Chinese owned businesses in San Francisco that their neighborhood was called Chinatown, and it still goes by that name today. By 1852, the gold rush was over. While it lasted, about 250,000 people flooded to California. This huge migration caused an economic growth that changed California permanently. The port of San Francisco grew to become a center of banking, manufacturing, shipping, and trade. Its population exploded from 400 in 1845 to 35,000 in 1850. Sacramento became the center of a productive farming region. However, the gold rush ruined many Californios. The newcomers did not respect Californios and their customs and their legal rights. In many cases, Americans seized their property. For example, Moreno Vallejo lost about all but 300 acres of his huge estate. Even so, their Spanish heritage became an important part of California's culture. Native Americans suffered even more. Thousands of them died from diseases brought by the newcomers. The miners hunted down and killed thousands more. The reason was the Anglo-American belief that Native Americans stood in the way of progress. By the 1870s, California's Native American population had fallen from 150,000 to about 58,000. The final effect of the California gold rush was by 1849, California had enough people to apply for statehood. Skipping the territorial stage, California applied to Congress for admission to the Union and was admitted as a free state in 1850. Although its constitution outlawed slavery, it did not grant African Americans the right to vote. For some people, California's statehood proved the opportunity of a lifetime. The enslaved woman Nancy Gouch gained her freedom because of a law against slavery. She then worked as a cook and washerwoman until she saved enough money to buy the freedom of her son and daughter-in-law in Missouri. Nancy Gouch's family moved to California to join her. Eventually, they became so prosperous that they bought Sutter's Sawmill, where the gold rush first started. On a national level, California's statehood created turmoil. Before 1850, there was an equal number of slave states and free states. Southerners feared that because of California's statehood made free states outnumbered slave states, Northerners might use their majority to abolish slavery. As Chapter 18 explains, conflicts over this issue threatened the survival of the Union. Main ideas. How did the California gold rush get started? Why didn't many 49ers become rich? And how did women and people of different racial, ethnic, and national groups contribute to the California gold rush? Thank you for listening. God bless you, and God bless America.